What's up, brother? It's your boy, Mike Muse. Welcome to an episode of the Mike Muse Show. I am so excited to be in conversation with my next guest. She needs no introduction. There are a few people who go by just one word, by a name association. Ladies and gentlemen, the incredible Kelis. What is happening, Kelis?
Hi. How are you?
I cannot complain. I am so excited to talk to you about all the things. I know we're going to talk about Midnight Snack. That is exactly why you're here today. So I'm going to make sure we talk about that. But what you don't know about me, audience, this is our first time meeting each other, is that I am obsessed with all things farming. That is a space that I advocate for. In particular, I advocate a lot for Black farmers. And my favorite committee in the government is the Senate Agricultural Committee. And then my favorite agency in the federal government is the Agricultural Agency, because of the fact of how Black people have been robbed of our land of so long and the importance of it. And so I'm a big advocate for Black farmers and Black policy relating to farmers, for people of color. And also to just for the health benefits.
We need you. We love that.
Yeah, and to go against this notion that Black women are the biggest recipients of entitlements from the government due to welfare. That's a lie. White men, particularly white male farmers, are the biggest recipients of government entitlements. And so I just love that you're in this space, Kelis.
Well, I'm so glad to have you in this space, okay? Because we need all the advocacy we can get, okay?
Yeah.
I am constantly talking to people because I think it is so important. We have been given such lies about our culture and about where we come from and what is deemed worthy and all of these things. And so for me, farming is my rebellion, and it is my it's my gift to my children, really, but also just to our people, and for that, so they can see, and be reminded kind of like what we had taken from us. So I second all your emotions.
I love that you said your farming is an act of rebellion. I was speaking with Robert Battle, the director of Alvin Ailey, and I was talking to him about, does he feel the pressure to create, movements and dance and pieces around Black identity and Black injustices that's happening right now. And he said the very act of Black people on the stage is an act of rebellion enough. And that took me back. So to hear you say farming for you is in your own way an act of rebellion, I think that is so, so powerful. And
for the record, though, it's received that way. Just, you know what I'm saying? Like, just so we're clear, like, I feel it because I mean it, but it is, the feeling is mutual. They definitely feel it as well. I have such a, I get such a sadness when I look at our communities and, how we've been stripped, not just of the obvious, but also of the knowledge of what we really were, and the truth, really, you know what I mean? And it's funny, like Malcolm X said, and not to get into all the deepness, but like,
we're fine. Let's go here.
I'm like, because I could go all day. But Malcolm X said, why would you ever trust the enemy to teach your children? And, I have felt like that for so long, and my children are homeschooled. But it is because it's like, why the things that we were taught about us from people who hated us doesn't really make, it's when you really think it's the most illogical, it makes no sense at all. And so it makes it so that you've got a society and a community of people who have no idea what their strengths are, what they should be proud of, where they do, the simple things, our language, our religion, our anything, all the things that make a person, right? Yeah. And so, for me, when I say that my land is an act of rebellion, it's because they don't want us to have it.
Yes.
Which is why, you know what I mean? I always say, and I'm obviously, this, but for those who don't know, and I say it all the time, we have to remember, look, I'm a history psycho. I'm obsessed. I love it. And so when you look at this country, not that long ago in the 30s, over 30% of farms and land was owned by Black people. The fact that we're under 1% right now is a damn disgrace. And if that's not systematic and intentional, then call me, somebody else. Because you know what I'm saying? Like, it is so deliberate and it is so intentional that, to me, even before I fully understood it, I was like, well, I guess I got to get me some land. Because if they're taking it, they must know something that I'm missing. You know what I mean? And so that for me has been such a huge eye opener and I always knew that I wanted land. I didn't know exactly for what at the time, this was years ago. But when I finally decided to like really make it our life, all these things started opening up, and I started researching and finding out all these things about just us and where we come from and who we are. And just, we've been told the narrative that was given to us was not our narrative. You know what I mean? It was someone else's about us, and you can't trust that. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. I love that we're here and audience, just to kind of give you some facts and what Kelis and I are talking about. At its peak in the 1920s, there were approximately 925,000 Black farmers, accounting for 17% or 1/6 of the U.S. farmers. Now, around the last census data, around 2017, estimates now to like 35,470. Let's add one for Kelis, Black producers, which just represents 1.7% right now. There's estimates that nearly over 34 million acres of land have been stolen from Black people from its time. And what Kelis is talking about when it comes to land, and the reason why land is so important, Kelis, and you're talking about it, you said this is for your children. So this is the legacy that leaves behind, but this is how generational wealth gets created. Because at a minimum, Kelis, as you know, even if you're not using the land, let's say, to grow, you still have the land that you can use as an asset to pull equity out of that could be used for your children's college tuition, starting up other businesses, or whatever you want to do.
The list is endless. It's like you're living in your own bank, especially when we live in a society where, we know that this currency is made up. We know that they're playing with it. They're trying to take it. All of these deficits, it's all trash and it's all nonsense, and it's not built for us anyway. So the reality is that this is where, I think also, I say this all the time because my mom brought this up to me, and it was resounding. Like, it literally stuck with me my entire, really, since I can remember her saying it when we were younger. She reminded me, she was like, George Jefferson from the show, before he had the actual, moving on up, before that, he had a show where he owned land. And then all of a sudden, this new show comes out, and it's the Jeffersons, and everyone's like, oh, this is so exciting. And he's moving on up. And all of a sudden, he's in an apartment. And I remember her telling me, like, how is that better? Like, he was a business owner who owned land. He got rid of it. Now he's renting an apartment. Like, how is that moving on up? She was like, that is the lie of lies. Like, and we all fell for it. We all bought it. And I think, as a musician, as an artist, listen, as Black people, as brown people, we come from rich land. We love all of the beautiful, shiny things because it was ours to begin with. So of course we have an affinity towards it. And so we allowed them to sell us this, like, this false sense of wealth, right? And it's like, I don't want what you deem what the worth of it is. My land is my land. And if I never sell it it's still my land, my rules, my everything. And so it's crazy because even in this past year, during the pandemic, it was funny, like the simple little things, like, to the point where now, like, and depending on where you're at, but like, I forget to bring a mask.
I'm in New York.
We were out here for a year without one. I'm like, we were walking around. I have, over 50 acres where we're free, and my kids are playing, and we didn't feel cooped up. And so that for me was freedom. It was my rebellion. It's my power. I want my children to understand, like you said, this is where generational wealth comes from. And I always remind them, whenever you see someone who doesn't look like us, who's doing well, remember that how they got it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not because they're any better. It's because of where they got it, how it was taken, and we built it for them. Okay. So this is and it's the truth. I mean, like, people get offended when I say these things, but it's like, how are you offended by the facts? Like, I didn't make it up. I would prefer that it wasn't that way, but that's what it is. When you see white wealth right now, you can guarantee 99.9% of the time, it came from someone else building it for them. That is just the facts. That's the history of this country and many other countries, and so this is our power, this to take it back. I remember when I bought the land, people were like, oh, Kelis is farming. Like, that ain't hot. That ain't it. Like it was some slave stuff. I'm like, well, for the record, let's just clarify here. Okay. We were not taken because we're big, dumb, like baboons in the jungle. We were taken because we were agricultural geniuses, because we were making stuff grow when people couldn't figure it out. That's how the whole damn thing started. So I don't feel any kind of way about going back to my expertise. Okay.
That is so true.
And
Lisa,
controlling what my children are eating. There's, when we talk about food deserts, that's done intentionally too, right? Like all of these things are done. And so we, as brown people, we have always been attached to the land. We have always been attached to the, whether we were taken from it, brought to it, meant to till it, like whatever it was, we have always been attached to the land. And that's not to be forgotten or ignored.
At all. And what's interesting about this conversation in the act of rebellion, it was a rebellion that was done to Black people in taking the land because of the value of it. If you think about the Tulsa race massacre, all the land that was burnt down and destroyed, they literally used, airplanes to destroy these Black owners' farms and lands and hotels and crops because of the land that they grabbed and was never given back. If you think about the most recent thing that we've been talking about, I'm in New York, by the way. I know you're in California, I believe, but even recently with the transferring of land back to the family of the Bruce's Beach, from Manhattan Beach back to the Bruce family, right? 21, Willa and Charles Bruce purchased this land that they developed for a beach resort. Now, finally, the government made a right on a wrong because they used eminent domain to take it from this Black couple, which, by the way, they did that to my grandfather, Kelis. My grandfather was the first Black man to own and operate a business in Lansing, Michigan, and do the eminent domain. They took that from him.
Absolutely,
right? And so, and now that value of the Bruce's Beach is now worth over $75 million, right? That's now back in control of the family. To what you and I are just talking about is the value of that. I want to go and just, I know I don't have much time with you. I hope, Kelis, that we can do another conversation.
Oh yeah, no, I would love
and put the layers back here. But you, to this point where people looked at you and you brought this farming of the land, you looked at it as different than slave. You remind me a lot of my friend Lauren Lissette, and I hope to one day be able to put you guys together. That's the honest truth, because you were at this avant-garde, this artist that people just didn't know what to do with. I was always obsessed with you, by the way, right? But always ahead of his curve, fashion, and then you go into farming. My friend Lauren, I went to Michigan with her. She went to Italy to study shoe design. And then all of a sudden, Kelis, she decided to do an internship on this farm in Pennsylvania because she wanted to do farmer as this beautiful Black woman who's into fashion, right? And so I just think that she was ahead of her time, right? And everybody looked at her in our friendship group like, are you crazy? You know what I mean? But she saw it. She saw what you saw. And I think it's something dope about disrupting and rebelliousness of who could be a farmer. Right? This narrative of one idea that farmers are just white men in overall, that's a lie. The mass consumerism
beyond the fact that even to go even deeper, no, you're right. And to go even deeper than that is the fact that, around the world, we have this vision of what a farmer looks like. But the reality is it's usually brown women who are harvesting and doing all of these things. And that is the reality as well.
Exactly. And so, but you and Lauren are really just doing this disruption of what that could be. Now I'm going to do a hard pivot due to time, disruption of music, because when you came in, your sound, your vibe, you were just so dope. I just remember this pink hair, you know what I mean? Like, I just remember your visually, you were just, I love art. And so for me, art is just a mirror of our society and its expression, its freedom, its rebellion in of itself. How have you felt now that I'm getting to know you more, always being a disruptor, right? Like, you're a disruptor with your style of music. You're a disruptor when it comes to agriculture. Like, how has that been for you mentally? I'm just curious about that.
Well, we've got wonderful terms now like disruptor and curator and influencer. Back then it was bitch. They were like, okay. So,
ladies and gentlemen, that is the show. Thank you for listening. God bless and good night.
Basically, right? Like that's what
it.
It was. All these cute words we've got now. I'm like, I'll take all of them. But we got another one for a long time. Okay. They were like, she's a bitch. We don't like her. She's disrupting everything. She's causing a problem. She's making people think about stuff. We don't like it. She doesn't fit how we think she should look. She doesn't sound they were just pissed off. Okay. They were like, she's difficult. Ooh, she's difficult. Yes. We don't like it. Like, it was always that. And I think that for me, though, I grew up with a very clear sense of self-aware. I grew up from, I'm from Harlem. My parents, I grew up, they're both New Yorkers. My mom was a chef and a fashion designer. My dad was a musician. So I grew up with very creative and, free thinking people as far as that goes. And so I was taught early that I was taught early that I was Black. It didn't matter, what people called me, what they said. It didn't matter what my hair looked like, how I spoke, because I was called many things. My mom was like, you're Black. you're beautiful, get into it, and
Yep.
you're going to have to do better because they're never going to give you your flowers. So I was like, okay. And so I think from the time I was tiny, since the time I can remember, my parents, and specifically my mom, was very adamant about making sure that we understood that. And so when it came time for music and for what I was doing, you know, I wasn't looking for the world to validate me. I had already been validated. And so I didn't even realize that I was going to come up against so much opposition constantly, because I was told that I was enough. And I was, and it's funny because, you know, growing up in Harlem, and then I went to a very white liberal private school. So I had this juxtaposition of my whole, you know, throughout my whole life growing up. And so I was always challenged. I was constantly challenged. I wasn't Black enough, or I was like, oh, you talk nice, or, you know, all the trash that we all hear, the same nonsense. So I think I learned to stand on my own early. I was like, okay, well, they don't get it, but I also knew who I was. So I was able to stand on my own, but I was like, this is who I am. I'm Black. You can say I talk white all damn day. I will read you front, back, and center because I know my history. I know where I come from. Do you know what I mean? And like the fact that I'm articulating the words, you're gonna hear it in these words, okay? Like,
yes.
So I never felt like I never cowered, because I was given a sense of self, and I was given a sense of pride before anyone even knew to take it from me. Do you know what I'm saying? So I think that was always like, that's how I grew up. And so for me, you know, being what we call a disruptor now, I didn't need anyone to like agree with me. I didn't need anyone. I came from a family that my mom told me, like, they hate you, girl. They're going to hate you. And this is why they're going to hate you. So you just keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so I stepped out prepared for that. Like my mom, I have a 5-year-old now, and I look at him and I talk to him similarly to the way that my mom spoke to us. Because as harsh as it is, and as unfortunate as it is that you have to have these conversations with these little people, it will give them a strength and an identity and a will to push when everyone tells them not to. Do you know what I mean? And so my mom from day one was just like, yo, they're going to hate you. They're going to say this about you. They're going to, but it ain't none of it true. But this is what they're going to say. So my mom always, prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. So when I did step out,
no wonder.
I was kind of just like, okay, well, who won it? Like what?
No wonder you have the Constitution
that you do. This is what it is.
Yeah, no wonder you have the Constitution the way that you do. Now we're talking about, we have these words just really quickly. I like you're talking about disruptor, and now we have other words for it. I also, you and I are around the same age, and so we always grew up with this terminology about Carlton. But I've been doing a lot of conversations, Kelis, about redefining what that terminology Carlton meant. I went to Denver, and I was the mayor invited me out to speak to the Black and brown men, young boys that were in the city, and one of them, speaking the story along, one of them called me Carlton, but there was something that I said I need to ask him more questions about that. He probably was like 13 years old. I come off the stage to get down into the aisles, not in a threatening way, but just kind of like, yo, friend to friend, let's unpack that. What do you mean by that? Long story short, his homie next to him was like, what he's trying to say is that we just don't see people around here that look like you. And then it hit me, Kelis, is that we have used that word singularly, Carlton, for the lack of words that we have to say that what you are is different. But it's just so different that I have to give it a negative connotation because of my insecurity and unfamiliarity of it. So then I'm going to use a joke about it. But we just didn't have the language to say that I'm actually rocking with you. I just don't know how to say I'm rocking with you. Right. And so that's exactly what we have. But now we have language for it, to where we are. Speaking of language and words, Midnight Snack. I love the play on snack. And let me be honest with you, Kelis, I kept singing Midnight Sex all the time, knowing so many people Midnight Snack, but I just kept calling it Midnight Sex.
So many people said that to me. I'm like, it could be, but that's not what I said, but it could be.
Like, I think we need a whole psychologist to do an interview with me, you, and the psychologist to figure out like why I am thinking about sex and not snack, right? Like, it's Midnight Sex.
Well, the thing is, they're interchangeable. They're interchangeable.
I got one in closing. I mean, I should talk about your music more, please, but I just love, like, you're just such, you've always been so fascinating for me. And I knew I didn't know where this conversation would go. I know your team was very specific on the guidelines of music, but I wanted to talk to you about these other things. And so thank you for being so open to talk to me about that. Of course. I think there's just so much more to unpack. But why come out now with music, right? Like, we've all been wanting it for so long, but like, why did you feel now is the time to give us midnight sex, i.e. snacks?
You know, it's funny, like I'm not someone who feels the need to be like in front of the camera or in people's faces all the time. Like I'm I can go away and, you know, and I'm very content. It's when those, like, I'm not the person to put an album out every year. So it for me, it's always like when I need mental space to have creative time. And so I think it's just been I'm always touring, first of all. So let me just say that I'm always touring. So it's not like I've stepped away from music, but I think to create new music, I have to be in a certain space. And I'm a very present person. And so I have to be prepared to be present in that space. And sometimes there's all these other things going on around me. It's hard for me to focus on that and to be authentically me in that space at that moment, which is the only way I know how to be. Right. So I feel like it took me so long, I think, just because I was busy, really. Like, there's no deep, like, I was just doing other things. And so it finally, like, this year, we all got sat down. We all had to have several seats. And, like,
sometimes it's just that simple, Kelis.
Like,
sometimes it's that simple.
I mean, several seats. Because I was like, yo, it's crazy. I had never thought about it, but this was the first year, in no exaggeration, in 20 years where I didn't go anywhere. This was the first year where I've been home. I was home all year. It had never happened. And so, like,
that's beautiful.
You know, it gave me time and it gave me space and it gave me, like, you know, really just clarity to be able to say, okay. And I wanted to do something where there were so many things I had to say. It was too much. This year was so heavy on so many levels. I wanted to do something that was just light and easy and really just like music focused. It was focused on kind of sonically where I was, not so much, you know, there was so much politically happening. There was so much socially happening, racially, you know, just everything. I just was like, this is overload. Like, we have been bombarded with everything, with all the feels. And I was just like, I can't do this. Right. I was like, I can't. So let me do what I know how to do. I can, you know what I mean? Like, let's make this feel a certain, I want to feel something. I want, you know, and so that's kind of where this came from.
I love it. Kelis, I gotta let you go.
Well, this was fun. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, I have, wait, hold the line real quick, Kelis. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Kelis. Thank you so much, Kelis, for joining the Mike Muse Show. It has been a pleasure. I hope you've enjoyed yourself too.
Absolutely.